I've mentioned in the past that Fire Emblem Fates is one of the most ambitious titles in the Fire Emblem series, introducing many new elements and concepts, as well as making changes to the traditional Fire Emblem norm. Now, while not all the changes worked, I feel one of the best changes was the addition of personal skills. In fact, it landed third place in my best and worst changes in Fates video. Personal skills, for those who don't know, are a new set of skills that are assigned to specific characters, and they will often do little things compared to what normal skills do, but they do give each character certain advantages in battle, as well as making them more unique in terms of gameplay. But which of these skills did I think were the best? Well, that's why we're here today, so join me everyone as I acknowledge what makes each unit unique as I count down my top 10 personal personal skills in Fire Emblem Fates. Before we begin, let's iron out some details. First is that this is just my opinion, and I'm ranking these skills on how useful I found them to be, and I favour certain skills over others because, simply put, they suit my playstyle better. But if you like certain personal skills I didn't mention, that's fine, feel free to like them as much as you want. Secondly is that naturally, because I use certain characters more than others, their personal skills are more than likely going to be on this list because I got to use them more and got more out of them. And finally, I will be acknowledging the personal skills from all the units, ranging from Nohrian, Hoshido, Neutral and Child units. With all that cleared up, it's time for us to see which units have that spark that makes them one of a kind, a unit you can rely on, a unit you can trust, a unit whose skills are theirs and theirs alone. Competitive and Bushido. I don't think there's a more fitting name for these skills that are assigned to their respective characters, since Bushido literally translates to Way of the Warrior, in the case of Ryoma, and it's pretty obvious that Takumi is rather competitive. Do you think he plays at EVO tournaments? Despite being skills for different characters, Bushido and competitive have similar effects. If Takumi or Ryoma lead and their support partners are either lower level in Ryoma's case or higher level in Takumi's case, then Ryoma receives plus 2 damage, minus 2 damage taken along with a plus 10 critical hit rate, while Takumi receives plus 3 damage, minus 1 damage taken and a plus 20 critical hit rate. The reason I like these skills are pretty obvious. I mean, giving arguably the two best Birthright characters these boosts pretty much makes them unstoppable most of the time, and considering how often pair-up is used in the new Fire Emblem games, these boosts won't go away anytime soon. With that said, I only put them at number 10 since with characters like Ryoma, I find that most of the time he doesn't need a support unit, so I often don't make use of his personal skill that much. And in the case of Takumi, rarely is he a lower level than his support unit, so once again these boosts don't happen often. Even if I personally don't make use of their personal skills that often, it's kind of a no-brainer to see just how effective these skills are, making some of the strongest characters in Birthright even stronger, especially in Ryoma's case, and being rather easy and otherwise second nature to activate. Bibliophile. You know, sometimes I find myself having characters carry around 5 weapons, but I only end up using one of them most of the time, making the other ones useless aside from that once-in-a-lifetime situation. I like to be prepared. Well, thankfully, Ophelia's personal skill actually makes carrying around all those extra weapons much more beneficial, especially considering she's a character that only needs to use one weapon most if not all the time. Bibliophile is Ophelia's personal skill that works by adding plus 10 critical hit rate to her when she is carrying 3 tomes or more. Now this type of skill is great for just about any character, but it works even better for Ophelia since by default she has a decent critical hit rate with normal tomes, but where this skill really shines is with her tome Mistletoe. I am pretty sure I mispronounced that. Mistletoe is Ophelia's personal tome that by itself has a 10% critical hit rate. Add to this Ophelia's stats, which vary depending on her mother, add her personal skill, and this tome will be the only tome you need for the rest of the game, since I found myself landing critical hits 90% of the time when using Mistletoe along with Bibliophile. In Fire Emblem, I find myself carrying around lots of weapons just to be safe, but at the end of the day most of them never really get used. Thankfully, Ophelia makes carrying around all the extra weight a blessing more than a curse. While plus 10 critical hit rate isn't outstanding, as far as personal skills go, it's rather useful, and since weapons no longer break, feel free to nuke the enemies as much as you want, for it is written amongst the stars. Fiery Blood and Wind Discipline. Whenever you have units blocking down a choke point or attacking the horde, you want to make sure that you can take the damage but also dish it out. Well, thanks to these two skills, not only do they make dealing with enemies much easier, but they actually reward you for taking all that punishment. Hey man, no pain, no gain, am I right? Fiery Blood and Wind Discipline are Rinka and Fuga's personal skills respectively, and they work by giving each of them specific boosts when their health is not full, with Rinka getting plus 4 damage to her attacks, and Fuga receiving plus 10 hit rate and evasion. Now on their own these are rather solid skills, but it's how they work alongside their respective units that make them so effective. Since both Rinka and Fuga are rather bulky, having respectable attack, HP and defense stats, well maybe not defense in Fuga's case. Normally they can take on a good number of enemies just fine. With these boosts though, they become even more effective, since they will most likely take a few hits, so having the extra damage and evasion can make fighting the hordes easier in the long run, especially if they happen to have the advantage against certain units. Sometimes it can be painful to work towards a certain goal or accomplish a task, but it's always nice to be rewarded for all the pain you're put through. And when you get either extra damage or increased hit rate and evasion, I'd say that both Fiery Blood and Wind Discipline are more than effective painkillers. Healing Desiccant. Azura's voice is certainly a thing of beauty and surprisingly helpful. I mean, it can make allies move an extra turn, give allies stat boosts, and even be the ultimate Deus Ex Machina in the case of Birthright. Once again, Azura's voice comes forth to aid us in the battlefield with her personal skill, Healing Desiccant. How this skill works is that at the start of the player's turn, all allies within the 2-tile radius of Azura recover 10% of their maximum HP. Now 10% isn't much to be honest, and most allies will be recovering around 3 to 4 HP at best, but considering the range of this skill and the fact that it's basically a free heal, if somewhat small, you can't really complain. Also, this skill works beautifully alongside Azura's role on the battlefield, since being the dancer, or in this case songstress, Azura will be close to allies in order to support them. As such, being able to recover small amounts of HP every turn is rather helpful, and can be rather effective when you least expect it. Plus, if you've only taken a small amount of damage, then it saves on you wasting a good heal staff or vulnerary on something so minor. Azura's voice is something I don't think I'll ever get tired of. I mean, I've listened to Lost in Thoughts All Alone so much it's pretty much engraved into my subconscious at this point, as not only is it beautiful, but it's also extremely useful, and Healing Desiccant adds to the usefulness. Man, with a voice like that, I feel Azura should start her own rock band. Fierce Mean. Benny might be mean looking on the outside, but in the truth he's nothing more than a big soft teddy bear. Well, at least to his allies he is, because to his enemies he's scarier than any bear they've ever come across, only being outdone by this guy. Fierce Mean is Benny's personal skill, which works by lowering the avoid rate of all enemies within a 2-tile radius of Benny by 10. Considering Benny's role in the team and his beastly, see what I did there, defense stats, Benny not only acts as an impenetrable wall, but also becomes a rather effective support unit, since by lowering the enemy's avoid by 10, it makes it much easier for Benny and other units to pick off the foes trying to dogpile Benny. Because of this skill, Benny is perfect for holding down choke points as the enemy tries to break through, since they're simply not getting past Benny unless they're a mage or have a hammer, and once in range, everyone else behind Benny can take out the enemies much easier. Benny may not be one of my favourite knights, but I won't deny that he's certainly an incredibly useful knight, and his skill Fierce Mean certainly helps in that regard, allowing him and other allies to take out enemies with greater ease, and showing them that Benny is scarier than any bear out there. At this point, I feel Keaton and Caden really need to step up their game. Quiet Strength and Rallying Cry. Well, would you look at that, Sakura finally made it onto her Fates list. Damn, first Korin reaches number 1 in the last video, and now this? Soon enough I'll be making Monster Hunter videos where I finally talk about the Kezu. Well, like I said in the last video, I like to give credit where credit is due, and well, I can certainly give credit to both Sakura and Hinoka for their personal skills. Quiet Strength and Rallying Cry are the Hoshido princess's personal skills that work by giving allies in a 2-tile radius 2 extra damage in the case of Hinoka, and receiving 2 less damage in the case of Sakura. Much like Healing Desiccant, these skills aren't amazing, but the small boosts you receive are rather useful, and they work well for the roles that both Sakura and Hinoka play, though more in the case of Sakura. This is because Sakura acts as the healer, and pretty much the main support unit, and though Hinoka is a Falcon Knight, she works very well as a magical tank, and surprisingly a physical one if given the right weapon. So often both these units will be surrounded by allies that will receive these boosts. Even though Hinoka and Sakura are my least favourite of the Fates Royals, not including Korin, I still like them and appreciate what they do, and well, their personal skills are something I most certainly appreciate. While the skills aren't amazing, they are overall pretty damn useful and serve their purpose, plus they perfectly reflect both Sakura and Hinoka's personality. What with Sakura's timid but determined demeanour, and Hinoka's headstrong and protective attitude. Hey man, they're not called personal skills for nothing. Bloodthirst. It's pretty obvious at this point that personal skills reflect the characters they're assigned to, and while Peri's personal skill Bloodthirst certainly reflects her personality, does that mean if past games have personal skills, Shinon would have the personal skill Arsehole? Bloodthirst is Peri's personal skill that works by giving Peri plus 4 strength, skill, magic and speed until the next turn if she initiates the attack and kills the enemy. Now even if you can't stand Peri, that's a pretty damn good skill, especially a personal skill considering you get plus 4 to 4 different stats, even though Peri really has no use for the magic boost. This skill, while great, does have some drawbacks. For one thing, Peri has to actually kill the enemy, not just hurt them, and I find that before promotion, this skill can't really be taken advantage of because as a cavalier, Perry's kind of meh. However, once Perry promotes, and in my case becomes a great knight, then this skill really shines thanks to Perry's added bulk and power, making her an already great tank, and Bloodthirst makes her an even better one thanks to the speed, skill and strength boost. Sometimes it takes a while for certain skills to become useful because of either the unit's levels or stats, but once it does, man does it ever shine, and this certainly holds true for Perry and her personal skill Bloodthirst, giving her a boost in all the right places, well most of the time, and being oh so fitting of her character. Well, it's like Perry says,
I know nothing will ever come between us because I'll eviscerate anyone who tries.
Supportive. Well, I'll be damned. Corrin has come third place in 2 lists in a row. At this point, it won't be long before I start putting the Tigrex on best Monster Hunter related videos. Well, even if me praising Corrin seems like a complete 180, once again Corrin proves that he delivers in regards to gameplay, especially in the case of skills. Supportive is Corrin's personal skill, that works by giving the unit Corrin supporting with plus 10 hit rate, plus 2 damage dealt and minus 2 damage received. Similar to competitive and Hoshido, this skill is really helpful to give units a boost and encourages you to support units together, and I feel this skill works very well with Corrin because of his role as the avatar. This is in regards to the fact that Corrin is able to support with everyone because, well, Corrin's the whore, and Corrin only needs a C-level support in order for this skill to activate. Thanks to this, not only are you encouraged to support with many units, but you are also rewarded for it, and since Corrin is going to be with you in pretty much every map, having this ability makes Corrin an incredibly good support unit, even though in all honesty, Corrin's going to be the one doing most of the fighting. Being the avatar certainly comes with its perks, and with the skill supportive, your allies are rewarded with some pretty awesome stat boosts for spending time with Corrin. Shuriken Mastery. At this point, Kagura has pretty much become synonymous with the number 2. I mean, she came second place in top 10 Hoshido characters, is my second favourite of the 3 ninjas, and was my second wife in Fire Emblem Fates, so it makes sense that her personal skill should also come in second place, for Kagura will forever be a silver medal it seems. Kagura's personal skill Shuriken Mastery works by dealing back half the damage dealt by any enemies using a shuriken, along with cursing them with the same stat penalties. This skill is very much like a counterattack, albeit a rather specific one, but the skill itself is very useful, especially since ninjas can be a hassle to deal with considering all the debuffs they do to you. Granted, this skill doesn't really play a big part in Birthright since you're fighting mostly Nohrian soldiers, but it is useful against maids and the like. Plus in Revelations this skill will be used much more often because of the enemy variety in that game. Also, this skill makes Kagura more bulky against other ninjas due to the reflected damage and stat penalties. Personal skills are pretty much passive skills that don't have any major bearing on the characters in terms of gameplay most of the time, but I feel Shuriken Mastery can be its own skill since it has a lot of attributes that are surprisingly effective, and I could imagine other classes really benefiting from this. While not used to its full potential, Kagura still benefits from this skill, and much like Kagura herself, this personal skill is strong enough to land in second place and grant Kagura yet another silver medal. Before we get to number 1, I just want to do a few honourable mentions. First up is Lucky Charm, Midori's personal skill that increases the chance of activating luck-based skills by 20%, which is a great skill, but only for the skills that are luck-based. Second is Kidnap and Capture, which allows you to capture enemy units and use them on your team, which is great for some variety, but I personally never found a use for it. Third is Nohr Enmity, which grants a Boro plus 3 damage to Nohrian units, a pretty good skill and perfectly suiting of a Boro's character, but not one of the best. Fourth is Mischievous, Sophie's personal skill which causes minus 3 defense to the enemy and causes them to lose their clothes when Sophie starts the battle. Again, like a Boro, the skill is pretty good and it's rather hilarious to use, but it's far from great. And finally there's Counter Curse, Nyx's personal skill which deals back half the magical damage she receives back at the enemies, very much like counter magic. This is a great skill, the only problem is that because of Nyx's high resistance, she won't be taking much magical damage or dishing it back either. Anyway, on to the number 1 entry. Roses, Thorns and Lily Poise. It seems the Nohrian royals beat Hoshido once again, since both Nohrian princesses take first place for my favourite personal skills in Fire Emblem Fates, and just like the Hoshido princesses, their personal skills are similar to one another but have reversed effects. Roses, Thorns and Lily Poise are Camilla and Elise's personal skills respectively, and they work by giving adjacent allies plus 3 damage dealt and minus 1 damage taken in the case of Camilla, and minus 3 damage taken but plus 1 damage dealt in the case of Elise. These personal skills are so good they might as well just be plain skills considering they have similar effects along the lines of inspiration, and though the boosts the allies receive aren't evenly spread out like with Hinoka and Sakura, being able to dish out and resist up to 3 damage along with resisting and dishing out an extra 1 damage is pretty awesome in of itself. What makes this skill so great is that it takes advantage of the role that both Camilla and Elise play, since Elise will be healing allies and supporting them most of the time, and Camilla will be able to adapt to and handle just about every situation as either an attacker, defender or supporter. As such, both units will be near your allies very often, and by doing so, they receive these wonderful boosts that, while not game changing, certainly make a difference and should not be overlooked when you decide to use both these Nohrian beauties. And there you have it. Roses, Thorns and Lily Poise are my favourite personal skills in Fire Emblem Fates, being very potent and beneficial for other units and are perfectly suited for the roles both Camilla and Elise play in the game. They may not be substantial in terms of effectiveness, but hey, every little helps, and I'll gladly take what these two have to offer any day of the week, which is why they take the #1 spot as my favourite personal skills in Fire Emblem Fates. This has been CRASHX500. I wish you all a great night, take care, and the time has finally arrived. The 10,000 subscribers mark has been met, the video to mark this milestone has been decided, and work on it has already begun. This is going to be a big one, people. I know you've been waiting eagerly for this, and I hope you look forward to it just as much as I do. Hey there everyone, thank you for watching today's video. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and why not subscribe to my channel in order to keep up to date with when the new videos are coming out. For alternate video recommendations, I first point you to my last video, Top 10 Fire Emblem Fates Skills, where I look at my 10 favourite skills from Fire Emblem Fates. Next up I point you to Top 10 Fire Emblem Bosses, where I look at my 10 favourite bosses from the Fire Emblem series, and for something completely different, why not check out my Top 5 Monster Hunter Weapons, where I look at my favourite weapons from the Monster Hunter series. Hopefully one of those videos will be to your liking. Once again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.